that's just what people do. The theory is you always find somebody new. I guess there was a time I believe that was true, but now...
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for coming along on this ride. I cannot tell you how important this is to me and how important this is to the Union itself and to our liberty and to our freedom. All these things are really, this kind of plays into all that. A better understanding of the Constitution is important for all of us. And this isn't a political discussion in terms of modern politics. Everything we're talking about here is antebellum. All of this is for, what was intended before the Civil War came along and everything went haywire. This is what was supposed to happen. So, before I get started, I want to remind you, I still have a cold. Today I actually feel worse than yesterday, so I will be doing a little coughing. I'm sorry. My nose is getting a little drippy, and I have a little napkin here to catch some of my snot when it comes out. Sorry, that's gross. Yeah, I know. But, just so you know, I'm still a little bit sick. So, getting into the topic. In our last video, we talked about the origin of the Constitution, how it came to be, why it came to be, what happened before it. And today's episode is going to pretty much kind of blend into that because, once we figured out that we needed one and we got together and started writing it out, the next decision was, what form of government should we have? Should we have a democracy, or should we have a monarchy, or should we have a republic? Well, there's a lot of writing about that, believe it or not. A lot of people, I guess, never read any of the writings of our framers and founders, but let me tell you something. There's lots of stuff out there that tells us what they were thinking. Now, a lot of you have been led to believe through the diseducation system, or the miseducation system, that democracy and a republic are kind of interchangeable. We're a Republican democracy, or a Democratic republic, or a Democratic constitution. That is absolutely false. Now, by today's terms, you could argue, because the word democracy has been redefined in recent decades, you could argue that we kind of do. But, by traditional sense, by the actual definition, not today's definition of democracy, there's nothing democratic about our government whatsoever. Nothing democratic about our state nor federal government whatsoever. In fact, democracy is forbidden by the Constitution. Article 4, Section 4 actually states that, if you're going to be part of this Constitution and part of this system, this union, you are going to have a Republican form of government, which implies that you are not to have a democratic form of government, right? Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, well, that's not what I've read, that's not what I've been told my whole life. Okay, well, understand that, democracy, again, has changed its definition. Just like the word literally has changed its definition. If you look in the dictionary right now, the word literally both means literally and figuratively with emphasis. So it actually says in the new definition that, I could say that, there's literally, 14 sticks next to me here in the dirt, and I'd be correct. Or I could say there's literally 40 billion sticks right next to me. And even though there's not, that would still be a proper use of the word because the definition has changed. So that's what's happened to the word democracy. So for our purposes, we are going to use the word democracy in the same way that our founders perceived it. Excuse me. So the way they considered democracy was that the people voted for laws and that the public, the majority wins, right? So there were no, legislators. The people were the legislators. There was an executive. There was somebody who would actually enforce these laws in some cases. But in terms of legislation, democracy meant that everybody had a say. And that was clearly a bad idea, and we're going to get into why. So, on the other hand, republic, which literally translates to, for the people, means that the government is created to legislate on behalf of the people as a representative of the people. So that's the difference. The government makes the laws for the people and on behalf of the people. in a republic, democracy literally means people's power, which means the people have the power. They are the ones in control. So that's the difference. Now, a lot of you say, yeah, but we democratically elect people. That's impossible. It's not how that works. You can't democratically elect people. You're confusing suffrage for democracy. Somehow, somewhere, people have come to believe that if you vote, which means you've exercised suffrage, if you vote, then you have exercised democracy. No, democracy means that you're making the law. Suffrage means that you're having a vote. So they are two completely different animals, and it's important to know the difference. Our government does not work democratically in any way whatsoever. Our representatives are positioned through suffrage. They're elected through voting, not through democracy. And the laws that they hand up to the president are handed up and voted on through suffrage, not through democracy. You could argue that it's kind of half democracy because they are actually voting on the law, but the problem is there's a president too who has the power of negative over it. And we're going to get into that in a later episode. But the point is, there's no democracy in the U.S. We're not governed as a democracy. Now, there's democracy in the U.S. on behalf of the people themselves, and that's a totally different animal. But in terms of government, in terms of the Constitution and your state government, all the things that we are talking about in these videos, there's no such thing as democracy in the U.S. Get that out of your head. So, back to the story. What's wrong with democracy? What is the problem with democracy? Well, our founders, Madison, I think probably did the best job of it, and sadly a far better job than I can do if you can read his language, which I can because I've read everything he's ever written. Now, he was wise enough to understand natural factionism, or factionalism in today's terms. Humans, and pretty much every other species on the planet, will naturally be part of a faction. They will naturally come together as groups and create, power within themselves. That is a natural way. I have to look at something here. We're good. I thought my light on my microphone went out. I was a little confused. So he understood that mankind is going to, under all circumstances, in any type of government, clump together into groups and oppose each other. That's just natural. That's not sinful. That's not bad. Today, it feels like this, this cultural thing that we're doing is the left is trying to force everyone to accept everybody's culture and to come together and be, one big, loving, peaceful family. That's stupid. And the reason that's stupid is not because it's not a very noble idea, and it's not, it's an altruistic idea. It is. The problem is it's an unreal idea. That's like asking a dog not to grow a tail. If you don't cut it off, it's going to be there. It's just natural. And if you try and cut off our factionism, you actually drive greater factionism. You make us gather into stronger and more angry clumps. So the more the left tries to bring us together, the more they're driving us apart. By doing that, by telling me I must accept trans this, gay that, religious this, that, and the other, whatever it is, by telling me that I have no choice but to accept it under penalty of law, that pisses me off. That makes me want to push even harder. That's what you're doing. I wish you guys could see that. So back to the story. The point is, that kind of factionism has always existed in mankind, going all the way back to the cavemen, and has always been the reason for war. So how do you handle factionism or factionalism? How do you moderate the contact between factions? Well, there are two possible ways, according to James Madison, and I subscribe to this. Now, he says it a lot better than I did, but the first way is to, by force, push these factions together the way the left is doing it now, to create a single faction by rule of the sword.
what that does, as I said, is it drives them apart. Garbage trucks here. It drives them apart. So that's a problem. That doesn't work. The second way is to provide space for the factions to work on themselves, to actually allow them to factionalize and to prevent one from having influence on the other. So it's the opposite. Instead of the most popular faction getting everything right and being the powerful one, the Republican idea was to allow everybody to do their own thing and to make laws that made it so that if you were doing your own thing here and they were doing their own thing here, you were both okay. And all they did was keep the wall between you from, becoming hostile. So that was the idea of a Republican government. And they did that by allowing this faction and this faction to have representatives instead of to have popular power. So now we have, maybe you have 500 in this faction and 50 in this faction. So you've got 10 representatives over here and you've got 5 representatives over here. But you still have some, these are representatives who can talk to each other, whose job is to talk to each other. It's a lot less combative. So the next question was, well, how many representatives per faction is a good idea? How many do we need? If you have just 1 or 2 on this side and 1 on this side, they may not, the proportions may be a little different. The representation won't be complete. It'll feel like, a lot of people will feel like they're not being represented because there's just not enough people representing them. But if you have too many, if you have 1 for every person on this side, if you have your 500 and your 50 over here, you might as well be a democracy, right? You're going to run into all the same problems. They are going to factionalize within themselves at a greater strength. So somewhere in between there had to be a balance. And that's what Madison worked on, was creating that balance. Now, today, in hindsight, while I absolutely agree with everything he did in terms of his ideas of a republic and in terms of trying to break down this faction, we have learned that this factionalism has still grown. It has still created a problem. We are back to exactly what he was afraid of. We allowed ourselves to be corralled into 2 major political factions, Republicans and Democrats, to the point to now, if you're a Republican, it doesn't matter what your Republican guy is doing because he's not a Democrat. And that's all that matters to you because you're part of that faction. And the same with the Democrats. If you're a Democrat, you don't care what the truth is. You just care to get the Republican out so that you could be in power. That's where we are. So somewhere between there and here, that fell apart. And my goal in life is to find that mixture, to find out what it is that went wrong in that recipe and fix it. I want us to get back to the Madisonian, Jeffersonian philosophy of, free individualism. People where factions could coexist, and the government's job was just to resolve the conflicts between them. So I hope that was enough for you. If it's not, ask me some questions. You can catch up with me on Facebook. If you don't know how to find me yet, don't worry, I'm going to do a page eventually for just this. I really appreciate you guys coming along. Ask me some questions. I will address anything you want in my next videos, my coming videos, as we go along, and you're going to find that some of the things you've already asked me, I'm going to address later on because they kind of blend better into those topics. Thank you so much. I love you guys. Take care. Peace out.
You heard a while, but that's just what people do. The theory is you always find somebody new. I guess there was a time I believe that was true, but now